My friend Alex and I took a week off to go hiking in the mountainous backcountry of Wyoming. We were staying in a small rental cabin, the kind that was miles off the main road, and felt completely isolated. We spent the first few days settling in and enjoying the intense quiet. On Tuesday afternoon, around 3 p.m., we decided to tackle a moderately challenging trail that led up to a high rocky ridge. It took us about 3 hours to get up there. The view was incredibly. Could see for 50 miles in every direction, and there was no sign of human habitation anywhere. As we were taking photos and resting, I noticed a figure far, far below us, standing near the edge of the dense pine forest, looking up. It was too distant to make out any details, but they were clearly standing still and staring in our direction. I pointed it out to Alex. He shrugged it off, saying it was probably another hiker taking a break, or maybe someone who lived at a distant ranch. But I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching us. We were on a high ridge in the middle of nowhere, and this person was just frozen down there. We packed up quickly and started our descent. As we got lower, closer to the tree line, the figure disappeared. I felt a profound sense of relief, assuming they had just moved on. We reached the base of the mountain round sunset. The air was getting cold and dark. As we hurried along the final stretch of trail that led back to the cabin, I heard a faint sound of twig snapping, not too far from the path. I stopped dead, pulling Alex back. We waited, hearts pounding. Then, about 20 yards into the woods, I saw it. The same figure, or at least someone wearing similar dark clothing, moving parallel to us. They were moving stealthily through the underbrush, keeping pace with us. They weren't trying to talk or approach. They were just shadowing us. We immediately broke into a panicked run, stumbling the last few hundred feet back to the cabin. We slammed the door shut, bolted the locks, and extinguished all the interior lights. We huddled by the window, peering into the dark, but saw nothing. Alex insisted it must have been a park ranger, or maybe we just saw a shadow trying to be the logical one. But we both knew what we felt. We were tracked. We spent the rest of the night jumpy, taking turns to watch. The next morning, we decided our trip was over. We threw everything into the truck and drove out without a backward glance. We didn't report it. What would we even say? Someone was staring at us from far away. To this day, I can't look at a high mountain ridge without wondering who that person was and why they were so focused on us. Story 2. The Firelight Visitor. 2 years ago, I inherited a small parcel of land in rural Oregon, where a very old, semi-dilapidated hunting shack stood. The place was remote, no electricity, no running water, miles from the nearest paved road. I decided to spend a long weekend there, mainly to clean it up and decide if it was worth keeping. When I arrived, the shack was exactly as expected. Rough, dusty, and clearly hadn't been occupied in years. The windows were intact, but the latch on the main door was loose. I spent the day securing the windows, cleaning out debris, and setting up my campsite inside the shack. I had a heavy sleeping bag, a few canned rations, and a small battery-powered lantern. As darkness fell, I started a fire in the rusty old wood stove. The warmth and the crackle of the wood were incredibly comforting in the total silence of the woods. I felt calm, finally settled. Later that evening, after the fire had died down to glowing embers, I was lying awake when I heard a faint, deliberate scratching sound coming from the outside wall near the door. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It was too slow and methodical. It sounded like fingernails scraping against the rough wood. I froze, barely breathing. I slowly reached for my flashlight, keeping it off. The scratching stopped. Then, a low, guttural voice called out, "Hello? Anyone home?" My blood ran cold. I was absolutely certain I was the only person for miles. I didn't move or answer. The voice called again, slightly louder, and this time, it was clear that the person was speaking right up against the wooden door. "I saw your light, friend. I just need a place to rest. It's cold out here." I stayed silent, my hand gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Then, the man started to jiggle the door latch. It rattled loudly. He repeated his plea, his tone shifting from friendly to slightly desperate. "Come on, open up. I won't hurt you. Just let me warm up by the fire." He knew I was inside. He had seen the faint light from the stove earlier. In a deep, shaky voice, I finally managed to whisper, "Go away." There was an abrupt pause. The rattling stopped. "You really want to be alone? Out here, kid?" His voice was now lower, venomous, and completely devoid of the earlier feigned politeness. I didn't answer. I just stayed pressed against the far wall. The man pounded on the door 3 times, a terrifying, final sounding impact before I heard his footsteps crunching away into the dark forest. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, staring at the door, clutching my knife. When the sun finally rose, I saw the imprint of a heavy boot near the door latch, and a few deep scratches in the wood. I packed faster than I ever have in my life. I never went back, and I sold the property immediately. I still wonder what that man was doing out there in the middle of nowhere, and how long he had been watching me before he decided to knock. Story 3. The broken window entry. I was crashing at my uncle's hunting cabin in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan during a college break at place, surrounded by thick, remote woods. It was a comfortable place, but known for being very quiet. I arrived late in the afternoon and spent an hour unpacking and enjoying the solitude. I was just about to make dinner when I noticed movement near the edge of the woods. A tall, thin man in a worn jacket was just standing there, observing the cabin. I felt instantly uncomfortable. I watched him for a few minutes, but he didn't move. He just stood there, staring. I sent a text to my uncle, asking if he knew anyone who might be checking the property. My uncle replied 10 minutes later, "It's completely secluded. No one else should be there. Call the county police immediately if you see him again." That confirmation threw me into a panic. I ran to every window and drew the blinds, locking the door. I told myself he was just curious and had moved on. Later that night, I was sitting on the couch, trying to distract myself with a book, when I heard a distinct clink from the kitchen area, which was on the far end of the cabin. It sounded like metal hitting ceramic. I froze. I slowly stood up and peered down the hallway. It was dark, but I could just make out a shadow moving inside the kitchen. This wasn't something outside anymore. It was inside the cabin. Adrenaline flooded my system. I didn't think, I moved. I bolted for the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and slid the heavy chest of drawers in front of it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my voice shaking so badly I could barely give the address. As I was speaking to the dispatcher, I heard slow, heavy footsteps moving down the hall toward the bedroom door. They stopped right outside. Then a deep, rasping breath on the other side of the wood. The person was right there. The silence was agonizing. He didn't try to kick the door in or yell. He just stood there, breathing. I whispered my coordinates into the phone and promised the dispatcher I would not hang up. After what felt like an hour, I heard a new sound, the footsteps backing away, slow and deliberate, moving back down the hall. I stayed locked in the room until the police cruiser pulled into the driveway. The officers found an unlocked window in the back utility room. The latch had been pried open. The man was gone, but they found a kitchen knife on the floor, taken from the drawer, next to a small pile of muddy footprints. He had entered the cabin, moved silently through the rooms, and eventually found me. The police theorized that my phone call or the sound of the cruiser approaching scared him off. The terrifying realization was that he was not only watching the cabin from the start, but he was patient enough to wait until dark, quietly break in, and confront me. I was lucky that he hesitated when I locked myself away.